sorry to say it, but I've known 12 Prime Ministers in my lifetime, and by a country mile, Boris Johnson is the worst.
Speaker, there we have it. They're the party of excess oil and gas profits. We're the party of working people.
If you, like me, live in the UK, I'm sure you've noticed Boris has been having a rough time. It seems as if there's always a new scandal. What seems almost miraculous for Boris is that at the time of writing, he's just survived a vote of no confidence. I figured now would be the best time to recount just a few of the scandals that he's faced while he's been Prime Minister. Unfortunately, I'm not going to include things that happened beforehand, so no Muslim women or letterboxes or watermelon smiles here. Now, during the COVID pandemic, procuring PPE was on everyone's mind, because at this point the NHS was in dire need of PPE. The way a situation like this is usually dealt with is the government awarding contracts to private companies. After multiple companies apply for said contracts, and applicants are whittled down until the government comes up with it. This usually leads to awarded government contracts being the most superior or cost-effective option. However, this process can often be slow and tedious, so the government can give direct awards, circumventing this entire process. During the pandemic, the government spent almost £15 billion on PPE procurement via direct awards. Well, that's all well and good, isn't it? Well, politics being politics, of course, cronyism was involved. One example included a company named Clandboy Agencies that manufactured sweets, being awarded almost £108 million to supply almost 26 million surgical gowns. Yes, you heard that right. A company that makes sweets. Another example was when the government awarded 8 separate contracts totaling almost £350 million to a pest control firm with only 16 employees and practically zero assets to produce isolation suits. To top this off, government contracts say that contracts should be published after 20 days from them being awarded. However, some contracts came much later than that. The Clandboy contracts were published almost 2 months after it was awarded, and some of the pest fix contracts were published as late as 7 months after the contract was awarded. However, by far and wide, the worst example of this had to do with a company called Ayanda Capital. Alright, Future Toby here, sorry. I was editing the video and I realized I never actually specified why Ayanda Capital's contract was the worst out of them all. It's the most egregious out of them all. Well, although the contracts at Clandboy and Pestfix were awful, we should never have given them out, to an extent, they still delivered on their contracts. Now that doesn't really change much, because these contracts shouldn't have been given in the first place. But for reasons you're about to see, Ayanda Capital, that contract was a lot worse. Anyways, back to the video. And a man named Andrew Mills. Now before we begin, I figure you should be introduced to a man named Andrew Mills. He was a senior board advisor to Ayanda Capital, founder of a shell company named Prosper Mill, and all whilst being an advisor to the UK Board of Trade, a staunch Brexiteer, and a backer of the Tories. Now, Ayanda Capital was a generic finance company that didn't do a whole lot in particular. So when they were awarded a £252 million contract to produce 50 million face masks, it was definitely a bit sketchy. Now, I figure it's a good time to talk about the Good Law Project. Now, the Good Law Project is a non-profit that's dedicated to achieving change through law. Anyways, the Good Law Project asked why this big money PPE contract was given to a finance company. The response given was that the contract was given to Prosper Mill. Yes, the shell company, with £100 worth of assets, and was only formed a year before this entire fiasco. What's more laughable is the excuse of how Prosper Mill could acquire 50 million face masks. Supposedly they acquired exclusive rights to a Chinese factory that could produce these masks. But why would a Chinese manufacturer give these rights to a company with £100 of assets when demand for PPE had skyrocketed? Prosper Mill later gave the contract to Ayanda. Now, to add insult to injury, the few masks that Ayanda could provide didn't have an adequate seal and were essentially useless. Ayanda walked away from this contract with profits around 56 million. Seeing as the company was registered to Mauritius, tax haven at the time, they probably paid about nothing in taxes.